we care immensely about finding success for our brands, for the companies that choose to work with us. We're fortunate to have them, give us their trust. And we work to earn that over and over and over again, because trust can be lost pretty easily.
Very easily.
And so we really talk and act a lot with our brands, with our customers, about, value equation and about that sort of give and get on both sides of the equation. It can't just be us always chasing being successful for our brands. It also has to be the brands that want to, partner with us and work with us to sort of help move the industry forward and be good stewards together. So I think finding alignment there, it makes it almost easy.
Welcome to another episode of WISKing It All. We're joined today by Niko Papadimitriou. Hopefully I said that right. Co-founder of, yes. I grew up with a lot of Greek friends. I think it helped. A lot of Greek friends. I grew up in Montreal, so big Greek community.
I love Montreal. Terrific.
But Niko is actually a co-founder of Q POS. I was looking forward to this episode. I love what you guys do, but we'll get into that. I'm sure most people know because you're not a small company, but we'll get into it. So first of all, Niko, thank you for joining the WISKing It All podcast and for being here today.
It's my sincere pleasure to be here. Can't wait to go back and forth on some fun things.
Yeah, 100%. You've had a pretty, impressive careers from finance, tech, hospitality. I always like to start with what drew you toward hospitality technology?
Oh gosh, I wish I could give you some incredibly cool, answer. I saw where the puck was going to be 10 years before it got there. I had a relatively short-lived career as an investment banker when I was a kid, when I was just out of school, and enjoyed it a lot. But, 2008 happened. I was 3 years in. And so, and I wasn't sort of the cream of the crop. I'm the first to admit, I wasn't, the top 10% of young investment bankers in America at that time. I was good. I enjoyed it a lot. I worked really hard and learned a lot. So that career kind of evaporated in front of my eyes. And I always thought that I'd open a restaurant when I was in my 40s, and wouldn't that be fun? And I love food and traveling and people and talking and learning from people. And those things are all so much better when you've got a great bite of food and a cocktail or something, right? And so instead, I was 26 and I opened a restaurant and a nightclub in downtown Washington, D.C. with a few other people. And I'll breeze through that.
No, I'd love to know that. These are some of the fun stories. Like first restaurant, nightclub. How was that?
Oh my gosh. Well, it was really hard. And somehow it was the same amount of hours that I worked as an investment banker, but in a very different setting and a different pay profile, and a lot more risk and, personal risk. Right. Yeah. But I learned an immense amount and I got to work with authentic, normal people. And that doesn't mean that when I was in finance, I didn't love it too. I worked with, brilliant numbers people. And when I worked in the restaurant, and I worked with brilliant people, right? I mean, people who work in restaurants have to know people and how to interact with people. And I learned so much through that time frame, those 4.5 years. I learned the pressures, internal and external pressures of running a business. And I got a firsthand look at the challenges that restaurants face. And I had met some folks over the course of that time frame, especially toward the end. I'd met a couple of other guys that, had an idea, right? You know how it starts, right? They had an idea to make something better.
Right.
And that's really how it started. They needed somebody, they were looking for somebody that could sort of articulate a vision and understood and could speak restaurant, as I always say.
Yeah.
I was very intrigued. I've always been drawn to technology, just intrinsically. I just find it to be interesting. And so,
that's so neat.
That's really how I got into this.
That's cool. I'm always interested. I love that, and I'm curious to know, like, at that time, right, when you got approached about this POS idea and we can make it better. What was, things evolved, a lot, but at that time, what was the main pain points that you were maybe seeing with POS that you're like, I like this, I want to let's do this thing, right? Like, what was it about the idea? What problem was it solving at that time?
Yeah, it's sort of funny that it's not that different than today in some ways.
Okay.
It really had to do with data and how you can move around data. I mean, I'm making it really simple, but ultimately at that time, 95%, 95+% of restaurants were not yet in the cloud. A very legacy approach, just by virtue of how point of sale systems and other on-prem technologies were built. Right. They were all built client server, which just means there's a lot of data siloing, and that inherently integrations are more difficult. And for those reasons and a plethora of others, it was hard for restaurants to be more nimble because their technologies were not very nimble. They just weren't yet architected to be nimble. And all of what I'm talking about, like nimbleness with technology and with architecture, still ultimately just has to do with data. Like, how does data transact, and how does transmission work between different technologies? So that was really the opportunity, was how can we more seamlessly enrich and in more performant way allow for data to move between parties, and so that restaurants could be more efficient and effective in whatever they were trying to do, working on inventory, communicating with guests, understanding who their guests are, understanding, pricing methodologies, and so on and so forth.
That makes sense. It's funny because I remember like that transition when cloud POSs first started in general, and it was like such a big shift because most restaurants, especially I dealt with a lot of full service restaurants, but had very expensive hardware setups, and it was normal to spend $15,000-$20,000 on your POS setup, and all of a sudden I remember that moment where like tablet POS in general kind of started. It was super. I always joke around that restaurants are always like kind of like the last of the party, but like that was an example of like like a big tech moment in the restaurant space where it was like, wow, cloud, like you said, going from on premise to kind of cloud, and obviously it's evolved quite a bit since then. But it's it's interesting.
One of the things you said, Angelo, is funny. It actually reminds me of like a decade ago, right? Which is, in the beginning there was I think a misnomer. And it wasn't operators' fault. I would argue that it was technology vendors' fault. It's nobody's fault. I guess the point is we weren't doing a good job of teaching what cloud meant. And so you said a second ago, which is spot on, that like in that arc of about 10 to 15 years ago, a lot of these tablet cloud solutions came about, right? Tablet doesn't mean cloud, and cloud doesn't mean tablet.
True.
In fact, there aren't many consumer grade tablet solutions around anymore, if you think about it, right? Toast started on tablets. They were called Toast Tab. They started on Samsung Galaxy Tab A's, right? Like, and it took them some years in the earlier years to get rid of all of those, to actually get their first 5,000 or 10,000 restaurants off of those consumer grade tablets and into a more purpose-built, nothing too insane, nothing too crazy, nothing way over-engineered that was going to last for 15 years, because that client-server idea of buying a software license and buying a POS terminal hardware at the same time and letting them both last as long as they could possibly last, those days were over. And cloud was what changed that, right? But ultimately, the detachment of cloud from tablet and vice versa was something that we had to educate the market on, and other POS vendors and such. But that cloud didn't just mean cheap or free, and cloud also didn't mean you'd have all of the resiliency and stability and mission critical nature of what restaurants need, and have it in a $200 consumer grade.
Right. No, yeah, spot on. And I love to hear from you, like in the early days, right? I like to always understand how the evolution, right? So today, maybe to give people, I mean, realistically, I think Q is so big that most of our listeners will know, but depending where they're listening from, maybe they won't know QPOS. But can you just talk a bit, and then we'll dive deeper, but talk a bit about where you guys are at today. I think you're at 300-ish employees. You guys got some awesome brands like Dave's Hot Chicken and more. Like, so maybe just to set the stage, so people listening in, like, Q, just to give you guys credit, give Niko and his team credit. He's talking about, an idea 10-ish years ago, but it's a very successful solution today. So maybe we'll just add a bit of context there.
Well, that's kind of you to say, Angelo, and it is on the hard work of many people that not all of whom are still a part of the company.
Right.
As companies grow, people move on, they do different things. But we have worked really hard to be one of some partners to the industry. So a little bit about us. We are a private company, so we don't share all of the numbers and stats exactly, but we have many dozens of customers. We focus from a go-to-market perspective, and about us well. I think probably a lot of operators do, but there are a lot that don't, because we don't focus on that part of the market. So we have a relatively narrow focus in the restaurant space. We focus on 20 to multi-thousand location, fast casual and quick service chains. So,
right.
The Dave's Hot Chicken of the world is a perfect example of fast casual, and Jack in the Box, for example, as a perfect example of a traditional QSR. And so we focus on those operational models. We don't work in the full service space. We don't do casinos and cruise ships. We don't work in the hotel or broader hospitality sector. But yeah, we focus keenly on fast casual and QSR chains, roughly in that 20 to multi-thousand location size.
Makes sense. Yep. That makes sense. I know, because I'm thinking about Whisk, right? When we started, small company, and then as the team grows, like you said, a lot of things change. But I'm curious, when you look back, was there a defining moment in the early days when you guys were, call it, a team of just 5 people that shaped how you approach things today? Because I find sometimes, there's certain things that shape you in the early days. I'm curious if there's anything that stands out to you in those, 5-person days.
The short answer is yes, there are. There are a few over the years, over the last, almost dozen years.
Right.
There are certainly 3 or 4 times where I think it would have been easy to hang it up or to pivot hard. And you never know how those would have manifested had you, changed a path, right? There's an old adage of, like, if you're leaving San Diego and you're flying to New York, a 1% change in your flight path will put you in Nova Scotia versus Florida, but you're trying to get to New York. So if that can happen, who knows what a hard pivot would have done 11 years ago. But
that's a fair point. Yeah.
I remember in the early days, and this is, I don't know if it was right or wrong, but it's something we did course correct on later. It was probably 11 years ago, and we were debating whether we had the opportunity to work with a very large hotel chain. And we were just doing the food service outlets within the hotel chain.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we weren't like going into hotels, but we were doing food service outlets, very low touch food service outlets in a hotel chain, or really a sub brand within a very large global hotel chain. And we were debating if the sort of gravitas, right? Whether that could be a lighthouse for us, right? Working with this brand was sort of worthwhile for our company. And we determined that it would be good for us. And we worked with that company for the next 4 years or so, 4.5 years or so, as one of a growing group of brands we were working with. But it just became more and more evident every year that went by that we weren't working with other food service outlets within hotels. It ultimately wasn't going to be the right solution for us to really be a great partner to that customer.
Right.
And so, look, we worked with them very, very closely, and we started having those discussions with them to say, hey, look, we'll support you for as long as it takes, gladly. But we want to help you move to a platform that's going to be it's going to be better for you. It's going to be better
right.
suited to service your needs better today
Yeah.
and in the future. And so we made that hard decision. Now you could look at it and say, well, 3 or 4 years later, you decided to move away from that. So it must have been a mistake. I don't know. I don't know that it was a mistake. We didn't burn a bridge and we're here today. So maybe it was good. Maybe it helped us win some of those other, brands along the way. Maybe it helped us in funding in the early days, but yeah, I think that's an example of a decision we made when we were 5 or 6 people. And then one that we went back and made when we were, 30 or 50 people. And
that's interesting. I never knew that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, listen, for people listening in, it's such a tough thing in any business world, but in the tech world, it's sometimes you get opportunities and it's hard. I think people get better over time, but to differentiate between a shiny gold object and like a real opportunity that you might miss. And it's a bit easier to connect the dots looking back and, I'm happy with the decision, but in the moment it's always hard. Right. So I totally can relate. Fast forward to today, you small startup team has grown to, like you said, I think 300 plus people. I know a big theme, and it's something really hard to do, is maintaining culture.
Sure.
I'd love to know, how do you think through that? And I know, being co-founder, I know you do a lot of the sales stuff, a lot of stuff, but in general, when you look at your company, how do you guys maintain, culture alignment when you're scaling so quickly?
It's a great question. I think part of it is that we have a really strong attachment to hiring for culture and fit, as opposed to just hiring based on, resume or
skill,
sort of, what you've done in the past. We have the notion in our hiring process. I don't want to share too much, but we have somebody in our hiring process. We always bring somebody in that helps identify from an outsider's perspective that person's ability to really work well with us, bring unique and different perspectives, and help kind of push us forward, bring us forward, as well as marrying in well with our culture, right? And so
that's cool.
I guess the short answer is we still hire for culture. And I hope that we can do that forever, whether we're 500 or 5,000 employees, 20 years from now.
Right.
But so I think that helps, but I don't think that's the silver bullet. I think that, what we're trying to do here, the mission, if you will, is something that if it resonates with you, the culture almost makes itself, right? It organically happens, and people come here, they get in the mix, they tell us that, they've worked at other companies, whatever, in our industry, out of our industry, it doesn't matter. And they haven't felt this sort of camaraderie. It doesn't mean we can't have bad days or bad weeks or great days and great weeks, but we have an openness. We challenge each other. We care immensely about finding success for our brands, for the companies that choose to work with us. We're fortunate to have them, give us their trust. And we work to earn that over and over and over again, because trust can be lost pretty easily.
Very easily.
And so we really talk and act a lot with our brands, with our customers, about, value equation and about that sort of give and get on both sides of the equation. It can't just be us always chasing being successful for our brands. It also has to be the brands that want to, partner with us and work with us to sort of help move the industry forward and be good stewards together. So I think finding alignment there, it makes it almost easy. Yeah.
No, it makes sense. And I think like what you said about trust is spot on. We'll definitely clip that part because it's true. Trust takes time to build, time, effort, right? It's longer to build, but it can be thrown off very quickly, so it's something to think about. One thing that came to mind was, as you guys are growing, I know a big part of your responsibility, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is, the sales and the whole, I guess, BD in general, right? And so how do you make sure that your sales team is more than just a sales team? And when I say that, I mean, like, of course, quota, numbers, all that good stuff, but how do you kind of ensure they're also building genuine customer value?
Yeah, it's funny because I, like any human, was already answering your question before you'd even gotten the seventh word out in my head, right? And I was answering it with, well, it's more than just a sales team, right? And then the next words out of your mouth was, clearly it's more than just a sales team. But I mean, it almost is as simple as that, right? If you look at your team and the people that represent your company out at market as sort of transactional people, if you're hiring for that, if you're looking for people, if you're seeking people who've done it 3 times before and you know, have the big fat Rolodex and just know all the tricks of the trade, you get in trouble. And you get in trouble because this market of ours is changing so incredibly rapidly. It is very different than it was 12 years ago, and it's different than it was 18 months ago. So you have to look for adaptable people who have a real sense of unearthing challenges and opportunities, who care immensely about building trust, about being able to see beyond, not myopically, but see the much bigger picture, to know that if they take a shortcut on this one deal or maybe 2 in a row, that ultimately, you know, that they might be burning the bridge or burning the opportunity for them to have a long, you know, very fulfilling and rewarding career as a part of this company, as a part of our industry. And so I think for all those reasons, we're really looking at people who want to be in this for the long run, who want to build trust with the industry as a whole, and do that through quality interactions and quality engagements, whether through formal sales processes or just having respect for one another at conferences or trade shows, or, you know, genuinely caring about and taking interest in what people are saying and people's opinions. So I think those are the kinds of traits that we look for. And when we find those kinds of people and bring them into the organization and teach them a little bit more about us and sort of how we interact, it happens organically, and we just find that we have much more of a customer obsessed organization than a sales team.
That's awesome. No, well said. And you know, as I think of the industry, I always like to get, you know, veterans like yourself input or kind of a vision of what you see. And so one thing that I'd love to hear from your point of view is, as you think about the industry, I guess, as a whole, what's something exciting or most exciting or is exciting that's happening in quick service and fast casual? Because you see a lot, there's so much tech stuff happening. I'm curious what's standing out. It could be at Q, it could be just in general. Anything that you see that you want to kind of share, again, I guess in the QSR / fast casual industry?
A lot of macroeconomic headwinds right now, specifically in the limited service realm, in the fast casual and QSR space, right? There's been a lot of price taken especially in the QSR segment, but also in the fast casual segment. And there are some large brand leaders that are saying publicly that they feel their target customer, right, their demo, is losing the value exchange that they want to be bringing, that they feel they're almost entrusted by bringing to their customer, right? You know, McDonald's made a big push 2 weeks ago now, maybe 3 weeks ago, that the price of they're bringing back the extra value meal. And that it's going to be, you know, at $10.
Finally,
right? And so because it got to a place where you could get, you know, a combo of some sort, and next thing you know, you're paying $16 or $18. And then it's like, well,
why am I in here?
Go to Chili's and get a plate of food this big that, by the way, is like pretty good these days, right? Like, casual dining chains have made a big push.
Especially Chili's. Chili's has been crushing it.
Especially Chili's. I went to Chili's for my son's 12th birthday 2 Mondays ago, and we had 9 kids, 2 adults, and the whole meal, 9 kids, 2 adults, the whole meal was $200, which that's not nothing, but like 9,
for that,
12-year-old kids and 2 adults, you know, each of them ordered a soda or a tea or all this stuff. And we got a bunch of fried mozzarella. So they were doing the cheese pulls and everything was like $200.
That's awesome.
It would have cost easily as much if we'd gone to, you know, Taco Bell.
Yeah.
So
easily. That's an interesting
point. So there's
point.
something to be said there. This is a long way of saying that I think that a lot of the exciting and interesting stuff that's either happening or maybe about to happen, or it's happened lately and it might just take off, are ways where you can significantly impact the value equation for customers in the limited service world, in the fast casual QSR world. So how can we make not just some tiny incremental change in labor, for example, or in shrinkage, like, food that goes bad, or overproduction that you have to get rid of because it's going past its holding point, things like that. How can you make big step changes in those areas, right? And so obviously AI is the acronym du jour, and certainly will be, but I'm increasingly excited by the ways that people are thinking about how to layer in AI and machinery and automation, both literal and figurative automation within the restaurant journey, within the four walls of the restaurant, to change the sort of gross margin reality of the restaurant space, given today's macro and micro environment. So I'm not going to give you like the juicy, I just can't wait for voice is it, or vision is it, or this or that. Although I am pretty bullish on vision. I think like the next 5 years could do some really neat stuff around vision. But I guess I'm just excited to see how AI and machine learning and just different data scenarios and the way that you can make changes to a brand and how it engages its guests and its community are going to continue to reshape the restaurant landscape in the next 3 to 5 years. Yeah,
totally agree. I mean, it's evolving so fast. It's I finally get it when, like, I think about, let's say, my parents with the internet, or like with Facebook. It's like I feel like I'm falling behind with AI every week. I'm like, no, I'm becoming that parent. I'm like trying to keep up, and obviously, like because of Whisk, I'm pretty up to date. But man, it's just things are changing so fast. It's hard, and every week, new leaders, new things, new models. Like there's so much going on that it's hard. But at the same time, super grateful to be living in this era, because it's also just super interesting.
But there's one thing, and I couldn't agree more, but there's one thing that we can't lose sight of. And as soon as you do, you're cooked, as my son would say. He's 12. You're cooked. You're cooked. It has to be real. Like, it has to be tangible. It has to deliver something real, something tangible. It has to save money, or it has to drive revenue, or it has to make an operator's life easier, which translates to direct results like better guest experience, or more accurate orders, or hotter hot food, or colder cold food. Like, it just has to be real. And that's what makes it hard, frankly. But if you're not out there disrupting and trying new things, you never make, if you can't take big swings, you don't make big changes. And the industry is asking for big changes. So I'm just glad there are so many, disruptors and innovators out there trying to take big swings.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny, and I'm curious to get your take. It's restaurants, I feel like it's changed, especially now because of AI. People are like more open to tech, but generally speaking, the restaurant space has always been like the least, let's say, willing to adopt it. Not the least, maybe the last of the party. It's like in every other industry, and then restaurants are like, oh, online reservations. And then it's like, they're always kind of like last of the party. I'm curious, what is it about restaurants like that you think make them so hesitant to like modernize their tech stack? Especially because you were in the restaurant space as well. Like, what do you think the reason is?
The restaurant gets a bad rap for being laggards from an innovation adoption or a technology adoption perspective.
They also get hammered in their defense.
I don't think, exactly. I don't think it's fair to say that. I think one needs to understand the fact that when a 1,000-unit chain is talking about, rolling out something that's going to touch each one of their employees, you're talking about retraining 15 to 40,000 people.
Yeah, fair.
There aren't a lot of industries where, in order to make, a change, you got to retrain 15 to 40,000 people. You got to retrain 15 to 40,000 people in as broad and deep of a system of workflows as like things like kitchen display systems, POS systems, training customers around kiosks, how like outside order tablets work, all those kinds of things, the world we live in, right? And so it's not that restaurants don't want to, it's that it brings different challenges. And so what I think we have to do in our world is we have to understand restaurants' desires and their constraints and do a good job of working internally to reduce the gap between those two things, working with partners to help further reduce the gap between what they're looking for from an innovative perspective and what their practical realities are, and make sure that it can be cost advantageous to adopting these things. And so it just means that we have to think through a different lens than like maybe other industries do, or maybe selling POS looked like 15 years ago, where it was just kind of like replacing one black plastic box on the countertop for a different, cheaper black plastic box on the countertop.
It's true.
We don't look at what we do as being a black plastic box on the countertop, right? The POS is one, head, if you will, of a number of different order channels that live atop that foundational unified commerce platform, that foundational data creation layer. And so we look at it differently. We look at the challenge differently, and we navigate those waters with our customers or our brands differently.
That makes sense. And I guess the other challenge, we see it at Whisk all the time, right? We do help with, our whole thing is just reducing beverage costs, reducing food costs, and just helping with, overall shrinkage and all that. And one thing we all, and I'm sure you guys see too, is just that seems more specific to the hospitality space, just staff turnover is just that much greater. Not to say there's not staff turnover in every industry, but it makes, like you said, you're training 40,000 people. But if they last 6 months, it's like like that turnover adds to the formula of pain, I guess, where it's like now you got to retrain X amount. So it makes it a very interesting. But I love it. I love the industry because it is complicated. I don't know why. Sometimes I'm like, I should have picked it. But similar to you, I just love the people business. I love dealing with restaurants, with bars, with hotels. That's what we deal with, and I love people. But it comes with, I guess, a lot of specific challenges, I would say.
It does. And I appreciate that you brought up turnover, because I'll throw two things back at that. One,
sure.
Especially in the limited service world, turnover is even higher than industry-wide.
That's fair.
But two things there. One, something I learned, I learn every day. Just because I've been doing this for almost a dozen years doesn't mean I know everything by any means. I'm proven wrong daily. Don't you worry, Angelo. But
same here.
but something that I learned like a year or 18 months ago that an operator told me, listen to the people that you're trying to build and service things for, right? Was that, yes, maybe QSRs have a 175 to 250% industry-wide annual turnover, but it's not really that every employee in the restaurant, and when I say this, you're going to be like, oh, well, yeah, duh, but it wasn't duh for me, right? I didn't already know. It's not that every employee turns over 1.75 times per year, or 2 times per year, or 2.5 times per year. You actually have some employees in the QSR space that have worked at restaurants for the same brand or even the same location for 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years. And then you have, and you have you have almost like a nucleus of some of these people that are really like the heart and the soul of that particular brick and mortar. And it might be 1 or 5 people. And then you have the other 5 or 15 people that turn over maybe like 3 times per year. And so in some capacities, the turnover rate industry-wide is actually lower than it seems. And in other ways, it's actually higher when you think about it. It's like the 75% are actually turnover even more than the industry-wide average. And so that just makes it harder. It just makes it harder to operate a business consistently and provide, again, the right guest experience day in and day out, daytime, nighttime, et cetera. And the other thing is that I've seen, and this is my finger in the air, so don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure we'll start seeing, if we can't already quote this, actually a reduction in labor turnover in restaurants. I think it peaked. So historically, it was like, again, in limited service, like somewhere around 2x industry-wide for limited service for a long, long time. Somewhere between 150% and 200%. And then in like 22, 3, like coming out of COVID, for the first couple of years, especially when like wage rates were really ballooning and inflation was really taking off from a U.S. perspective, at least. I bet that spiked at like 300% industry-wide. I bet it probably did. And I'm sure Technomic or Nation's Restaurant News or the IFA or large, great organizations that have these numbers have this data can corroborate something like that. But I think it's coming back down. And I think it's been coming back down. I'm seeing in some of our chains a lot less turnover. I was talking with the president and COO of Dave's Hot Chicken, right? Jim Biddix, who's a great partner to us and a good friend. And just a couple of weeks ago in Florida, and he was talking about how at Dave's, they have under 100% annual turnover of employees. Wow. I think he may have said they had like closer to 50% at most, maybe. And so he's seeing a lot less turnover in their brand.
That's cool.
Than others. And sure, they're a newer brand, kind of a hot brand. They're certainly on a streak, and they've got an incredible product, and people love it. And they're a great partner to Q, and hopefully we're a good partner to them. But like, he's seeing a fraction of the industry average from a turnover perspective. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see industry-wide, labor turnover come down a bit. And I think that's a lot because we're paying people more, and also hopefully technology is doing a better job of making them frontline operators having to be less in the weeds, like less on their heels all the time, and coming from a place of already being behind. And hopefully technology is getting to a place where it's helping them. And it's making their day-to-day easier. And so, hopefully, and then things like, operational stability and focusing more on guest experience and whatnot, and training, like I said earlier, all these things come together to create a better environment for frontline employees to work and to provide consistency to the brand's guests.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I hope you're right about that trend heading in that direction. That's really exciting news. As we slowly come to the end of the show, there's a couple quick ones I got for you. One, I'd love to know. We have most of our listeners, in fairness, are like restaurant operators, but we generally most are entrepreneurs, and so I'm curious to what advice would you give hospitality entrepreneurs who are maybe considering betting on a big new idea. Right. You've done it. You've been doing it for the last 12 years. I'm sure you learned a lot. Any advice or words of wisdom you could share for someone who is, in their version of the nightclub you were in back then and have an idea and wants to maybe take a stab at it?
Accept help.
Accept help.
It's really I think it's really as simple as that. It's an impossible mission.
Don't do it alone. Yeah. That's a good one. I like that. And then I got one or two more that I love to just kind of obviously plug where people can find you and Q and all that good stuff. But thinking just kind of ahead, I'd love to know what you can share, because I know, like you said, Q is still a private company. But can you share maybe what's next for Q in the near future? If there's anything you could share or you're excited to share. If it's top secret, it's top secret. But I figure that'd be a nice little way to slowly wrap up.
No, I appreciate that. And I think I can I can tease just well enough so it's valuable enough for me to say here, but it'll also, have something neat coming just down the line. But
awesome.
So it's no secret that we've invested a lot in the edge, in bringing the edge and an edge architecture into the four walls of a restaurant. And we do that for resiliency, stability, and speed. We do that for uptime, and we do that for predictability of the on-premises, on-site technology working for restaurants. Okay. But we've always said that it's an area for innovation for us, not just clearly an area that we've been innovating at market.
Right.
We brought edge into the four walls of a restaurant 4 years ago. So we're the first to bring it to market and the first to sort of reimagine what that can really look and feel like. Cool. But we've always said that it was a keen area of focus for our brand, for our company, and an area of focus for innovation. And so I will tell you that there's a great restaurant conference called FS Tech, Food Service Technology, that's coming up just this upcoming week, right? It's Sunday through Tuesday. It's this Sunday,
right? Yeah.
It's this Sunday through Tuesday. It's at the Gaylord in Kissimmee, Florida, which is actually Orlando, or I think it's like part of Orlando, on the fringe of Orlando. And we will have some exciting things coming out there, which will, I think, have been in the past by the time this pod goes live.
Right.
But I will say that
in 2 weeks. But
we're doing some really cool stuff in areas where we're bringing tangible results, like I talked about earlier, to the operator, both at a store operator or franchisee level, as well as at the corporate entity or the franchisor level, if there's a franchisor-franchisee relationship, and even beyond to a level of innovation that we think is very important to focus on and keep sort of keeping our foot on the gas from an innovation perspective. So
that's exciting.
I'll say that we think edge is the future. It's the now and the future that's going to unlock different realities and capabilities for AI and for creating tangible value for restaurant operators.
That's exciting. It's funny. I was actually I've never been to FS Tech specifically, but people in the industry keep telling me about it. And I live in Miami, so it's not too far. So I'm still thinking of just coming to crash. I mean, obviously buying a ticket, but just coming to crash because so many industry friends that I see on LinkedIn are going to be there. You're going to be there. So it'd be cool to meet you in person.
I will, if you send me a note, I will connect you with the person that puts the show on, and they will give you a ticket. I have no doubt. So if you'd like to go, I think you should. It's got a lot of terrific technology partners there, and myself and all of our peers. It's a good day, a couple days of learning and interacting. Cool.
Yeah, honestly, I'd take you up on that because I've been getting kind of FOMO, and I'm like, man, I want to go, and it's too close to say no. I'm like, I could drive there 3 hours away.
Absolutely.
Man. Okay, that's awesome. And then last but not least, I always like to just connect people. So people might have really enjoyed this episode. Hey, this Niko guy sounds super cool. How can I connect with Niko? How can I learn more about Q? So just anything you want to plug away. We'll put the links, but it's good to have it in audio.
Of course. I'm hyper attentive to LinkedIn. So I literally respond to every single person that ever sends me a message on LinkedIn. Not always all of the AI generated prospecting ones, but certainly if anybody ever writes me a note, good, bad, ugly, looking for a connection, wants to ask a question, I don't care if they want to learn about Q or not or what have you. I respond to every single message that someone sends me. So if you're interested in saying hi, just send me a message on LinkedIn. You can also check out our website at qbeyond.com. That's QUbeyond.com. There you go. QBeyond.com. And we're all there, and you can contact us through that. But like I said, all of us are very approachable, we love to connect with folks. So, come check us out on LinkedIn, check me out on LinkedIn, come to FS Tech, come say hello, or go to our website.
Love that. Well, there you have it, guys. Niko Papadimitriou. I'll put his full name and LinkedIn profile so you guys don't have to worry about spelling that out so you can connect with Niko. Thank you for joining us on the WISKing It All podcast. It was awesome.
My pleasure, Angelo. Thank you so much.
If you want to learn more about Whisk, head to whisk.ai and book a demo.